So obviously this one is for the rental. So I'm going to begin by asking what it was that initially attracted you to getting involved in the film.
Well, it was Dave really, and a really playful script, and based in some very, very interesting real world ideas and paranoias about total surveillance and the Airbnb culture, where a world in which we live that you can click a button and go and live in someone else's house. In that sort of abstract sounds quite weird, and he sort of plays with that, runs with that. And there's a number of other sort of real world concerns sort of laced into it that give this sort of bedrock of really sort of unsettling atmosphere. And then he just has a lot of fun with it. So yeah.
Yeah, they taps into a sort of paranoia that many people kind of have, and it does highlight, doesn't it, with this trust we placed in strangers, where we just, in some ways, it's a great thing that the world's kind of small and we can just go and live in other people's homes. But do you think it's wise that we have these anxieties and we're kind of like sort of streetwise to what could happen and stuff? Or do you think in some ways we just need to suppress it and just keep that sort of blind trust in our fellow man?
No, I think it's something that that cinema and sort of horror films really get to explore, is the sort of the innate goodness or innate evil in humanity. Is this character going to do the right thing, the good thing, or are they going to do something unspeakable? And it sort of dances that line. And I think each of the characters in this movie have the potential to be not very nice, and whether they've done horrible things in their past, or they're about to do horrible things, or they just sort of don't seem like a very nice person. And I think it's sort of, it plays with that as well. It's like, who are we sympathizing with here? And that in itself is kind of an interesting game. And I think that's something I really enjoy about the genre, is just the call and response with an audience. So either you're shocking them or frightening them, or you're just kind of asking weird questions and kind of leading them down this path. Do they want to come with you, or are they going to switch it off and say this is too much?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned obviously some of them sort of having sort of sketchy pasts, and some of them not being the most kind of nice people at times. That must be good for you as an actor to play characters that are flawed and have these kind of sort of multi-layered kind of different dimensions to their kind of demeanor and to their background as well.
Yeah, I mean, who isn't? And I think the richer texture you can find with that is great. And sometimes with characters it's much more obvious and easier to find those. But yeah, it's something that's always enjoyable. And I think particularly with Charlie in the rental, he's not great, but he thinks he is. And I think that's quite an interesting character in itself. People who think they are great and honourable and actually are pretty unspeakable is kind of relevant.
And have you got any kind of Airbnb horror stories? Most people that have stayed in Airbnb have had some sort of turned up, and what they thought was going to be a mansion turned out to be someone's shed.
Not really a horror story, but I did rent a place actually when we were shooting this. I just decided not to stay in a hotel. I thought I'd stay up in Oregon and stay in some little cabins and stuff and explore the woods and that kind of thing. And so there was a company that they give you a code and you go in and you stay in your place. So great. So I arrived and I put in the code and I went in and I stayed a night in this lovely place near the beach, and it was great. And I woke up and I got a call. Oh, you're in the wrong house. There's a family outside and they're scared to come in because you're actually staying in the wrong house. So fortunately I was clothed and got myself out of there. But I mean, it's not really a horror story, is it? But that's probably the weirdest thing that's happened to me in an Airbnb so far.
Well, yeah, because it's a good thing that you had a code, because when I was at the Berlin Film Festival last year, when we were allowed to be out around and traveling, I got back to my Airbnb at about sort of 4 a.m. because the Berlin Film Festival has a few parties.
Sure, absolutely. Berlin comes alive at night.
Exactly. And I put my key into the lock and turned it, and it just snapped in the lock at 4 a.m. And I had a flight at 8. So I was a bit of a state. Anyway, I called this person.
And it's cold. It's cold at that time of year in Berlin as well.
And a guy came to kind of turned up, and I was standing there, I'm really sorry. And then I was like, how do I get back into this house? And this locksmith came and he just nudged the door of his shoulder and the door just opened. So all that an open
Good
door.
Old Berlin locksmith. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. What's Dave like as a director? Because obviously there's always a bit of an intrigue when sort of recognizable faces from the screen make that kind of move. What type of filmmaker is he?
Yeah, I mean, super focused and incredibly steeped in his craft. And I didn't know him prior to this. He's a friend of a friend, and we were introduced, and and that's how he sort of pitched the idea to me. But you know, we got to know each other through this really, and he is super focused and, you know, laser focused on what he wants, and you know, really drilled down on certain beats. Had a very clear idea of the aesthetic he wanted, and I think he got a really cool look out of this film. And that's quite special too, you know, to have that kind of signature. But yeah, just, you know, a much more earnest, I think, than I expected, you know, from having seen him in some not very earnest films, you know, but really enjoyed him in those. And then, you know, to find this, you know, really, you know, just sort of sweetly steeped in great genre cinema. It was lovely.
Yeah, those Francos are quite a talented bunch, I think.
Yeah.
Have you given much thought to directing one day yourself? You know, because obviously you've been working with some such inspiring filmmakers and working with the likes of Dave. Does that encourage you or make you think to yourself, you know, is this something I could do one day?
Definitely. I think, you know, I'm always intrigued by actors turned directors, and I think I would like to have a go. The more I work with great filmmakers, you know, the more interested I get, and I get quite kind of nerdy about shots, and I'm always kind of pestering camera crews for like what that bit of kit is and what does it do. And, you know, I love all the toys on set, and I love watching people use them, you know. And I think it's part of the really exciting film set is when a camera crew are as excited about the shot and the scene as you are. You know, I think some certain things you could get where it's just like press record, okay, just let them talk and let's go home, you know. And I think there are other things where people are like, wow, this shot is really cool, and we're building this thing that's going to bring the camera here and you're going to run through here. And, you know, I think that's something that really excites me about filmmaking, is the whole sort of family feel of it.
Yeah, talking of family, I was wondering, because obviously this was written by Joe Swanberg, and he's a big part of the kind of mumblecore movement, and those behind the
Right.
those behind the guest star too. I was wondering, are you kind of in that world? Does it feel like a community, the mumblecore? I feel like there's mumblecore meetups.
I mean, it's certainly with genre filmmakers and the genre filmmakers of this generation that I know, there is definitely you know, a community, and there's a dialogue within their work. Sometimes I remember working with Adam Wingard, who was like, you know, Jason Eisner's going to love this shot, you know, and just sort of, he just knew that he was speaking through the lens to him. But mumblecore is not a term that I think actors resent mumblecore, because I don't think we would like to be thought of as mumbling.
No.
But I sort of know what it means. I don't know many filmmakers who embrace that term as, you know, for their work, but I sort of know what it means. So yeah, I guess there's a nice, certainly a nice community within those filmmakers.
Yeah. Are you still sort of surprised at the success of The Guest? And I mean that's not to say it's not a fantastic piece of cinema, because it really is, and the success is more than deserved. But I guess you can never tell when a film's going to take off. But when you sign up to, say, Beauty and the Beast, you do probably anticipate a huge, big kind of audience being there. But with The Guest, I mean, it just was such a big success critically amongst fans. I mean, was that a bit of a surprise to you at the time?
Well, somebody said the other day, in fact, it was Simon Barrett, the writer. He said, all it means when somebody calls something a cult film is that it didn't make any money at the time. And, you know, I think with the world that we now live in, where, you know, the films are distributed and disseminated in a different way than they used to be, you know, people are discovering films later. You know, if Netflix suddenly acquire your film, you know, 5 years down the line, and everyone's stuck at home during a pandemic, it's actually, you know, it's a really good time to get your work out there and suddenly get it seen. And so it's been interesting, just as and when different platforms have acquired that film, you get, you know, a new influx of fans, and that's great. And I think that's what cinema is really all about. You know, you can discover a film that was made in the 50s tomorrow, and, you know, just be one of its new fans, and I think that's just a wonderful thing. So I'm really excited by, you know, people still discovering that movie. I'm very fond of it, and it really is a lot of fun.
Yeah. So what would you say, though? I mean, outside of The Guest, you do get kind of recognized for most. What do you get most stops on the street for the most? Which character or project would you say?
It depends if I have a beard or not, I think, and whether I'm wearing a mask. Although it freaks me out. I mean, I have to say I haven't been out that much this year, but on the 2 or 3 occasions I have been out of the house with a mask on, sometimes wearing a hat just because it's sunny, and I still get recognized. I think that is a very strange thing, to be able to recognize somebody just from that. But maybe that's that's the magic of cinema as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was thinking all the kind of mask wearing must be a bit of a dream come true for a lot of the kind of celebrities out there, because you want to go out wearing all of those kind of like masks and hats and stuff. It would look like they're going to rob a bank, but now it's the kind of norm.
Right. Maybe some will carry on doing it. I don't know.
So my final question, really, because I'm sort of running out of time, was obviously one thing that would be harder to be recognised for is the upcoming animation, The Prince, which I was reading about earlier, because obviously it's a vocal appearance.
Yes.
What can you tell me about that, sort of tonally? Because it sounds like a kind of satire that's kind of in a kind of playful, quite I don't know, affectionate, quite sort of satire in some ways.
Well, yes, I haven't sort of seen it all strung together, but I would say it's a sort of historically accurate version of The Crown.
Cool.
Would be how I would phrase it currently.
Right. Was it quite good fun to shoot? It looks like it's got quite a quite a barbed, quite satirical kind of sense of humour.
It is a lot of fun. Yes, Gary Janetti, who was a big part of Family Guy, brings a huge part of that flavour to the palace.
I'm looking forward to seeing it. But thanks for your time, Simon. Cheers.
Thanks, Stefan. Cheers.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys.
Hey You Guys, huh?
Hey You Guys.
Is that from the Goonies?
It is indeed, yes.
Nice.
Hey